Hello and welcome to this session, and in this session we shall further understand the concept of nouns. Basically, in this session what we will have to understand is about the different types of nouns, and particularly in this session what I shall be taking up are the first two, that is the common noun and the proper noun. So what really do we mean by a common noun and what do we really mean by a proper noun, and how really are they different is what we will have to understand in this session. So let me proceed. Even before I dive deep and explain to you as to what really the common noun and the proper nouns are, have a look at this sentence. The scientist made an important discovery. And then have a look at this sentence. Albert Einstein made an important discovery. Well, I'm sure that when you would notice these sentences, you realize that in the first sentence, the word scientist happens to be the noun. And in the second sentence, the name Albert Einstein happens to be the noun. But then I'm sure that you know that the word scientist in the first sentence is referring to a general category of people who work in the field of science. And since it is not having any reference to a particular scientist, that we categorize the word scientist in English as a common noun. But then in the second sentence, we are speaking about a particular scientist by the name Albert Einstein. In other words, we are more specific, and hence this kind of words in English is what we categorize as a proper noun. All said and done, through this example, what you have been able to understand is that common nouns happen to be such names in English that refer to generic entities, whereas proper noun in English happens to be names of such entities which are more specific. Now that you have understood the broad difference between the common and the proper noun, let me dive a little deeper and tell you that common nouns happen to be such nouns that can be in both the singular and the plural form, but then the proper nouns can only be in the singular form. What I mean to say is that the proper nouns do not have a plural form. Well, what do I really mean by that? I shall be explaining it to you, but then one more piece of information that I would wish to provide you is that the common nouns often require articles. Well, you know that the words the, a and an happen to be articles in English, and we shall be discussing about this in detail moving forward. But then at this point, what I wanted you to understand is that these articles are indeed required by the common nouns, but then proper nouns do not require the articles. Anyway, what does all of this mean? Let me explain it to you through a few examples. Have a look at this sentence. An online store sells various products. And have a look at this sentence. Amazon sells various products. Well, I'm sure that through this example you understand that online store happens to be a noun. Amazon also happens to be a noun, but then online store refers to a general category of business that sells goods over the internet and is not specific, and hence is referred to as the common noun. But then in the second sentence, Amazon happens to be a specific company, a specific entity about which we are talking of, and hence this noun is categorized as the proper noun. So again, you can notice that common nouns are more generic in nature, whereas proper nouns happen to represent specific entities. Anyway, let me give you one more example. Have a look at this sentence. A company launched a new product. And have a look at this sentence. Microsoft launched a new product. Well, again here, the word company happens to be categorized as a noun in English, and Microsoft also is categorized as a noun in English, but then company here in the first sentence refers to a general category of business that produces goods and services, and hence is categorized as a common noun, whereas Microsoft here is a specific entity, a specific company about which the sentence is referring to, and hence is categorized as the proper noun. So looking back at the definition now, I'm sure that you understand that the common nouns refer to generic entities, whereas the proper noun refers to specific entities. But then what really do these other points mean? Let me proceed and explain it to you. Have a look at this sentence. The scientist made an important discovery. Well, you know that in this sentence, the word scientist happens to be the common noun, but then what I want to highlight here is that it happens to be the singular common noun. Well, what I mean is, have a look at this sentence. The scientists made an important discovery. That way, in this sentence, the word scientists happens to be a common noun, but then not a singular common noun, rather, it happens to be a plural common noun. Well, that way, have a look at this sentence that Albert Einstein made an important discovery. No doubt, Albert Einstein happens to be a proper noun, but then it happens to be a singular proper noun. And have a look at this sentence that Albert Einstein's made an important discovery, and in this case Albert Einstein's happens to be a plural proper noun. But then, all said and done, what I want you to understand is that out of these four sentences, only the first three are valid and the last one is invalid. And why is it invalid? Well, that's because a proper noun cannot exist in the plural form. The word Albert Einstein's is meaningless, and hence the sentence itself happens to be an invalid sentence. But then through this, I'm sure you've been able to understand that the common noun can exist in both the singular and the plural forms, whereas the proper noun can exist only in the singular form and it cannot exist in the plural form, and that is what is being indicated in this definition as well. Hope you have been able to understand it, but then when I would give you a few more examples, I'm sure the concept shall become completely clear. So let me proceed. Have a look at this sentence. An online store sells various products. Well, in this sentence, the word online store happens to be a common noun, but then you know that it happens to be a singular common noun. Now, have a look at this sentence. Online stores sell various products. Well, in this, definitely the word online stores happens to be a common noun, but then a plural common noun. And now have a look at this, that Amazon sells various products, and you know that in this sentence, after all, Amazon happens to be the singular proper noun, and in this sentence that Amazons sell various products, that the word Amazons happens to be the plural proper noun, but then you know after all that the proper noun cannot exist in the plural form, and hence this sentence itself in English happens to be an invalid sentence, whereas all of the previous three sentences in English are valid. And again, through this, what you have been able to understand is that the common noun can exist in both the singular and the plural forms, but the proper noun can exist only in the singular form and not in the plural form. Anyway, let me give you one final example to substantiate this. Have a look at this sentence. A company launched a new product. Well, you know that the word company happens to be the singular common noun. And then have a look at this line. The companies launched a new product. Well, here the word companies happens to be the plural common noun. Well, that way, have a look at this sentence. Microsoft launched a new product, and in this, Microsoft happens to be the singular proper noun, whereas in this sentence that Microsoft's launched a new product, obviously the word Microsoft's happens to be invalid because we cannot have the proper noun in the plural form. And again, you know that this sentence happens to be an invalid sentence as a whole, but all of the previous three sentences are valid. So I'm sure now you have been able to understand that the common noun can exist in both the singular and the plural forms, but then the proper noun can exist only in the singular form, and the plural forms for a proper noun happen to be invalid. Hope you have been able to understand this. But then, what do I really mean when I say that the common nouns often require articles, but the proper nouns do not require articles? Well, what I mean, let me tell you through a few examples. So, let me proceed. Have a look at this sentence. The scientist made an important discovery. Well, you know that in this sentence, the word scientist happens to be the noun and actually is the common noun. And what I want you to notice is that the word the happens to be an article. Well, that way, you know that English as a language has three articles, and I shall be discussing moving forward about articles in great detail. But then, through this example, what you have been able to understand is that the common nouns indeed require articles to create proper English sentences. But then have a look at this sentence. the Albert Einstein made an important discovery? Well, you know that the word Albert Einstein, after all, happens to be the proper noun in the sentence, and the happens to be the article. But you know what? This sentence itself is an invalid sentence. And why is it so? That is because the proper nouns do not gel with the articles. The moment I eliminate the article from the sentence, that it becomes a valid sentence. So through this, what you have been able to understand is that the common nouns often require articles to create meaningful sentences, but then the proper nouns do not require articles for sentence creation. And I am sure that this point also is completely clear. However, let me give you a few more examples to substantiate this. Have a look at this sentence. An online store sells various products. Well, that way, in this sentence, online store happens to be a generic store and hence is categorized as the common noun, and obviously an happens to be an article. But then the same sentence, just in case I rewrite it like this, that an Amazon sells various products. Well, no doubt here Amazon happens to be a proper noun because we are not speaking about a generic online store, rather we are speaking about a specific one and hence is the proper noun. But then the word an here, which is acting as an article, definitely is making the sentence itself an invalid sentence. And why is it so? That is because the proper nouns do not gel with the articles, and the moment I remove this article, now the sentence obviously becomes a valid sentence. So again, I am sure you have been able to understand that the common nouns are associated with articles, but then the proper nouns are not associated with articles. Anyway, let me give you one last example. Have a look at this sentence. A company launched a new product. Well, again here, company is a generic term and hence is categorized as a common noun, and the word a that is present over here happens to be the article in English. But then in case I happen to rewrite this sentence like this, that a Microsoft launched a new product. Well, again here Microsoft happens to be the proper noun because we are referring to a specific company, but then this article a over here is making this sentence itself invalid, and the moment I remove the article from here, now the sentence that Microsoft launched a new product definitely is a valid English sentence. So I am sure that now you understand that common nouns often require articles, but then proper nouns do not require articles. But all said and done, all of these definitely happen to be the various attributes associated with respect to the common noun and proper noun. But then you should also know that the common nouns are not capitalized unless they appear at the beginning of a sentence, but then a proper noun always happens to be capitalized regardless of their position in the sentence. Now, what does this mean? Anyway, let me clarify this through a few examples. Have a look at this sentence. Books are a great source of knowledge. Well, have a look at this sentence as well. A great source of knowledge is books. Well, both of these happen to be valid English sentences, and you know that books in the first sentence happens to be a noun. Obviously, in the second sentence also it happens to be a noun, and obviously it is not referring to any specific book, and hence in both the cases it happens to be common nouns. But what really I want you to notice is that in the first sentence the books B begins with a capital letter, but in the second sentence the B of the books begins with a small letter. And why is it so? Well, that is what I wanted you to understand, that common nouns happen to be such nouns that are not always capitalized. No doubt they are capitalized only if they are going to be coming at the beginning of the sentence, as in this case. But then just in case it is not present at the beginning of the sentence, if it is somewhere in the middle or even at the end of the sentence like this, that it will always begin with a lowercase letter. I'm sure I have been able to communicate this to you. Anyway, have a look at this example. Children played in the park. And then have a look at this sentence. Many children played in the park. Well, I'm sure by now you know that in both of these sentences, children happens to be the common noun, but then in the first sentence, the C of the children is in the uppercase because the common noun is appearing at the beginning of the sentence. But then in the second case, since the common noun is not present at the beginning of the sentence, that it is going to be starting with a lowercase letter C. I hope I am completely clear with this as well. But then what I also want you to understand here is that the proper nouns are always going to be starting with capital letters wherever they are present in the sentence. Well, what I mean to say is that have a look at this sentence. Albert Einstein made an important discovery. And then have a look at this sentence. An important discovery was made by Albert Einstein. Well, I am sure that you realize that in both of these sentences, the word Albert Einstein refers to a particular person and hence is categorized as the proper noun. But then I am sure by now you are also noticing that irrespective of where Albert Einstein comes, whether at the beginning or at the end of the sentence, the proper noun is always capitalized. You can notice that in both the cases, the letter A is capital irrespective of the position at which the proper noun is present in the sentence. Anyway, let me give you one more example to substantiate this. Have a look at this sentence. Amazon sells various products. And have a look at this sentence. Various products are sold by Amazon. Well, again here, I'm sure that you understand that Amazon is a specific company that we are here referring to and hence is treated as the proper noun. But then you can notice that whether it is present at the beginning of the sentence or at the end of the sentence, that it is always beginning with an uppercase letter. After all, you can notice a capital A in both of these cases. So I'm sure that through all of these points related with respect to the common nouns and the proper nouns are completely clear. So, before I conclude this session, I would wish to present to you this table which captures the differences between the proper and the common nouns effectively. Hope you would enjoy watching this table, and I'm sure this session has given you certain insights about the first two types of nouns. But then if you really want to know more about the other types of nouns and gain complete mastery over this part of speech, then all that you need to do is to meet me in my next session. Thanks for watching. Let's meet again in my next session.